Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video and welcome to something a little bit different. Yes, F1 Fantasy is back for 2025. Honestly, I was quite unsure. Jamie and I discussed it on the podcast yesterday when this video goes live. They had still done nothing with F1 Fantasy this year. We're not going to be talking about it on the podcast at all, just because we kind of felt, obviously, over the last couple of years, they haven't really done a lot with F1 Fantasy. But maybe this year, if they start actually showing some proper improvements with it, which I think apparently they're meant to be, then I might make some videos here on the channel. Of course, today's, though, is more just kind of to discuss kind of all the pricing, everything like that, the strategies I'm going to be implementing, my teams, as well as everything else, so you guys can kind of tell me what I've done wrong. We can react to your teams as well, and things like that. First and foremost, though, obviously, if you want to join the official Mat 2 and 2 League, you can do as well. On obviously with everybody else on the channel. I'll try and potentially kind of do some plugs and things like that over the course of the year. There will be a link down in the description below, a direct link to join the league, or if you want to use that code, you can see as well, P, I believe that's a 5 ELSEED T, and then I assume that's a 06. You can join the league, but like I said, there'll be a link down in the description below as well then. But yeah, I think F1 Fantasy is always fascinating at the start of a season, because it kind of gives you an idea as to what kind of Formula 1 and obviously the team that set up the Fantasy League are kind of expecting to be the case for the all-new season. So I've already actually set up my three teams. We'll kind of talk about them in just a moment. Of course, I normally have a serious team, kind of a fun, or like my backup serious team, and then kind of a fun third team that I like to roll with. Of course, if you're not aware as to how the game works, you basically obviously have to pick 5 drivers and 2 constructors with a budget of $100 million that is kind of just decided with the in-game currency. You then obviously, like I said, have to pick those 7 kind of elements to your team. You get the option to like DRS boosts, so 1 driver every week gets double points. There's also then chips and things like that, which give you some various scenarios over the course of the year. And you can transfer out 2 drivers every single race weekend as well for free, and obviously bring new drivers in as well. So it can be quite good fun. Personally, I feel that they need to implement F2 and F3, but I understand that obviously for most people, you're not going to be following F2 and F3 as much. But I think if you could have like 2 F1 drivers, 2 F2 drivers, and an F3 driver, and then say 1 F1 team, and then 1 Formula 2/1 Formula 3 team. Obviously, most of them are exactly the same in F2 and F3, but I think that'd be quite cool and kind of potentially actually allow people to kind of be more follow the junior formula as well down the line. And then it kind of feels like you've got, obviously, a Formula 1 driver lineup, a Formula 2 and a Formula 3 driver lineup as well. And it would just add a bit more kind of strategy and interest into the game mode as well. But yeah, obviously, it still can be quite good fun. I try and keep tabs on it, from time to time. And like I said, obviously, if you're doing the league and things like that, and they do some good stuff with it this year, then I'll make sure that I do some shout-outs obviously as we go throughout the year. But yeah, let's take a look then at my teams ready for the all-new season. Now, it's very, very clear that Formula 1 think that it is going to be another World Championship battle between Lando, Norris and Max Verstappen. Lando is slightly favoured heading into the new year. As you see as well, he's got 24% of the current pick. Personally, I think Lando Norris is... I've said before, I think he is going to be world champion in 2025, but I don't think he's going to quite dominate in the way that Verstappen has been able to in recent years. Lando just doesn't quite kind of have that. Not saying he's not good enough to be a world champion or anything like that, but Verstappen is a certain kind of driver that, will win 10 races in a row, and I just don't see Lando Norris being that kind of driver. You can see, despite the fact, though, that he is 600k more than Max Verstappen, 24% have put Lando Norris in their team versus 16% having put Max Verstappen. Now, I believe, actually, the most applied driver so far, Carlos Sainz, personally, I'm in the mindset, is alarmingly overhyped. In coming into the year, or not just Sainz himself, but Williams. I think people are looking at that headlining, fastest result in winter testing. I don't think Williams will kind of break in towards that top 4 or anything like that. I think, they could challenge Aston Martin if Aston have really kind of just put their eggs in the 2026 basket. But yeah, I don't think Williams is kind of going to be this best of the rest team that F1 Fantasy has put them down as. So 61% of people having put Carlos Sainz in their roster seems absolutely mad to me personally. One driver, though, that I do think is very undervalued, though, this year is this man, Fernando Alonso. 46% of people have put him in their roster, so clearly a lot of you guys out there as well feel that Fernando is undervalued inside this game. Aston Martin on the whole actually feel very undervalued this year. I think they've kind of gone back after hyping them up a bit too much in recent years to suddenly now, really downplaying their chances for 2025. Now, we will possibly see Aston Martin obviously completely sacrifice 2025 anyway and just put all their eggs in the 2026 basket. But Fernando Alonso is always someone that could do something a little bit special as well. I put him in my roster. I think he's going to do quite a good job this year. You can see further down though, Lance Stroll. I think he might be the lowest placed driver in the entire thing, if I'm not mistaken. 6% for him, 7% for George Russell, and 9% for Liam Lawson at the moment there, which is, so yeah, Lance Stroll, no one wants to put him in their team. Esteban Ocon seems to be quite highly rated as well inside the game. I've actually gone with Jack Doohan, which some of you might think is a really odd move, but that is basically because I think he'll get replaced by Franco Colapinto, and the way these things work is that Colapinto will just take Doohan's pace. So obviously, because I've already got Doohan locked in, if Colapinto's then worth more, I'll get him for free, and therefore my team will be worth slightly more than originally anticipated as well there. Ollie Behrman's another one that a lot of people kind of seem to believe is going to be very undervalued as we head into the new year. The only thing I'm kind of slightly unsure about is Haas again, or another team that often, as you get to the end of a regulation cycle, they kind of then focus again all their eggs on the next regs. So 2025 might be a bit of a rough year for Haas as well, but I think they've got a good, kind of base heading into the new season as well there. Clearly, Sauber are not well rated heading into this year. Hulkenberg, very, very quick driver, worth only 6.4 million. Hadjar, though, only worth 6.2 with Gabriele Bortoletto. Their last place overall, only $6 million heading into the new year. I think Sauber are probably going to be the worst team again. The main reason I put Bortoletto in is that I haven't got any money left. You might be looking, though, a little bit higher up and thinking, very, very odd that I put 2 number 2s inside the game. Now, that is because if we look over at the constructors, the way this game mode works, or the way this game works, is that there's a real emphasis, it feels like probably slightly too much of an emphasis on constructors' points. So, for example, if both drivers reach Q3, which, for a McLaren and a Red Bull, for example, you'd really hope they would, you get 10 points immediately, which is quite helpful. That's the same as getting pole position with one of your drivers as well. So, if, say, for example, an Oscar Piastri and obviously a Lando Norris both make Q3, immediately we get 10 points. If Oscar ends up, second on the grid, that's 19 points immediately, and we've saved a load of money off a Lando Norris. So, yeah, I've put in so that obviously McLaren are hopefully going to be bringing us in quite a lot of qualifying points. I've also obviously put Haas in my team as well, because I'd like to think normally both Saubers will go out. I would assume a V-carb, a Hadjar or Doohan will go out. So I think Behrman or Ocon should hopefully be making Q2 quite regularly. And I'd like to think that, both of them could be making Q2 quite regularly as well. The way these work again is you've got to have one of the big teams and then one of the small teams in there. So it's just, again, about budgeting. It was also kind of why I went so aggressive as well. When obviously you look at the sprint races, drivers, obviously there's a lot of points to be had if you're making overtakes as well, and obviously positions that are gained as well throughout those races, and obviously sprints as well dish out a decent amount of points. Obviously I wouldn't be putting Magnussen in, obviously I know he's not in the roster anymore for 2025, but obviously yeah, you lose a lot of points if a driver DNFs or gets disqualified. I think it should only be 10 for a DNF and 20 for a disqualification in a sprint, but it is still Obviously, very, very damaging if your driver gets involved in an accident as well. Their race, again, you can see we've got quite a few bonus points as well. Fastest lap nets you 10 points. Driver of the day actually nets you another 10 points. So you might want to kind of steer into that a little bit more. My logic for round 1 was that if Oscar Piastri does well, then he will hopefully get driver of the day in Albert Park. It'll probably either go to him or a rookie, I would have thought, if one of the rookies does really well. And then you can see, obviously, the points you're awarded for the races is exactly the same points as you get, obviously, for where you would finish in Formula 1. So 25 points for the win, 18, 15, and so on and so on. So I think that's, going to, again, you could try and kind of put all your eggs in like a Lando Norris basket or something like that. But I've just kind of gone with kind of safe bets. I feel like that's going to be the way to score well this year. Is not, it's not going to be another year of like a Verstappen domination like 2023 or something like that. This year it is, I think, going to be more about safe bets and drivers that are consistently scoring good points week in and week out. Pit stops as well. McLaren are normally pretty good at pit stops. So I'd like to believe, we should pick up some decent points there. Haas can be a little bit worse, but hopefully we're not going to be, even if we're just picking up like 2 or 5 points quite regularly. And it is nice to see that obviously you get more of these bonus points as well. So you also get 5 bonus points for the team that records the fastest overall pit stop of a race, and then 15 bonus points if a team sets a new world record time. I don't think we'll see that this year. But you never know; it could quite happen as well, which would be rather cool. So that kind of gives you a good rundown of obviously what's going on with all the points inside the game. So as you can see, Oscar Piastri, I've got him doubled up. If any of you guys did watch the podcast, you'll know I've said Oscar. I think he's finally going to break the Australian Grand Prix curse, and I think he's going to. Well, I've said he's going to win this race, which might be a little bit brave and stupid. I've also put Liam Lawson in there just because I think Red Bull. I can see him. I mean, he's valued less than Antonelli, if I'm not mistaken, at the start of the year. Yes, there you go. I think Red Bull is going to have a better car than Mercedes, and I think that Lawson, especially earlier on in the year, is probably going to be battling George Russell. Should be a little bit quicker than Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Like I said, you kind of need to have 2 kind of high-profile drivers, and then kind of 2 worst drivers or 3 worst drivers in your roster. So that's what I've gone with. I could be tempted to try and make like a big move for Leclerc or a Hamilton or something like that, but I wanted to throw a McLaren driver in there to kickstart the year, because that's where I think it is likely, I think McLaren are going to start the year very, very strong. Like I said, I think Alonso is just massively undervalued inside the game as well this year at the moment. Jack Doohan is more for when Franco Colapinto hopefully gets that seat. But, that being said, Alpine did look good in winter testing, so if Jack can kick on at the start of the year, maybe get a couple of points finishes, things like that, he could be looking still very, very good and could be, a bit of an underrated gem inside this game mode. And then, Bortoletto, I think he's very, very good. I do think he's very, very talented, but I had to put someone cheap in to round out my budget there. Haas and McLaren, as I've said, I think McLaren are probably going to be the strongest car to start the year, and there is quite a heavy points bias towards constructors as well, and Haas, I think they're a little bit undervalued as well inside this game mode. I think they're going to be better than VCARB at the start of the year, especially. But I could see them kind of challenging Alpine, your Williams, your Aston Martins. How on earth Williams are worth that much more than everybody else towards the top of the roster, I will never understand. But clearly someone over at F1 Fantasy thinks that's going to be the case. But ultimately, I would really, really avoid putting Kick Sauber in your team as well, just because I think, they're going to really, they're going to lose a lot of points for not getting either driver into Q3 and things like that, is my expectation. Taking a look, though, at my other couple of teams, though, I had to put one in with Lando Norris, obviously, as my lead driver, of course. Like I said, I think he's going to be world champion, so hopefully he's going to be picking up good double points here and there. I also obviously wanted to rep Lewis Hamilton and Ollie Behrman as well in there. Alonso, Pierre Gasly also in, they're 2 drivers that I think could cause big upsets this year. And again, Haas and Aston Martin this time round. As my constructors teams. Again, they could be right there or thereabouts for points pretty reliably as well. And then my last roster, I kind of tried to go all in on Ferrari. I did originally put Hamilton in as well, but you couldn't make it work. You were slightly short of cash in the end, so I've gone Charles Leclerc, George Russell, with Leclerc obviously doubled up, and then the 3 cheapest drivers with Kick Sauber and Ferrari as well there. So yeah, hopefully a fun team it'll be nice to kind of have a look at as we go throughout 2025 as well. But yeah, like I said, of course, in the intro, let me know obviously who is on your team. Join the league as well, please. Like I said, links down in the description below. Hopefully, like I said, they made some tweaks and changes to F1 Fantasy this year, so it should be good fun. I'd like to try and get at least 1,000 teams into the league as well, ready for the new season. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, tell me your rosters, everything like that, and we'll be back very soon with more F1 Fantasy content.